When we think back over the past 25 or 26 years, basically since the turn of the century, we can really see how fast technology has advanced. My earliest recollections, I think I can go back to the 80s where my dad had his own advertising studio, graphic art design studio, and he would be the salesman going around seeing his customers. Back then he had something called a pager. It was a very simple, basic little device that would obviously make a sort of a beeping sound. And that would let him know that there was somebody out there. He didn't have no idea who it was who was trying to contact him. But he knew that there was somebody out there that wanted to speak to him urgently. So he would have to go to a phone box or wherever, phone, I think it was back to the studio where he worked, and they would tell him who it was that wanted to speak to him urgently. Like I said, I might be getting this story a little bit wrong because, as I say, I'm going back 40, 50 years and I can't remember exactly how the process worked, but I do remember it was like a little beeping sound that would just let him know that there was somebody out there that wanted to make contact with him. Then after that period, I think my next recollection, I must have been probably 16 years old at this stage, and I was working in London. I spent 1 year working in London, sort of my first year at work, getting a bit of work experience. And I remember people there working in London, and they were carrying around probably the first mobile phones, and literally it was the size of a brick. You imagine carrying around a brick with you all day long. How cumbersome and heavy it must be to have this huge device on you all day long. Then I think my next recollection of the advancement of the mobile phone was probably when by this time I think I was living in Spain, so we're probably up to about the year, must be the late 90s, or it could be the early 2000s. And I remember loads of shops opening up selling Nokia phones. Everybody was rushing out to buy a brand new Nokia phone. To let everybody know how rich or wealthy you were, people would put these Nokia phones on their jeans, strapped onto their belt, and they would strut around making sure everybody could see them walking along with their brand new Nokia phone. Then after that, I think we had the phone called the Burberry, was it? Am I getting the name correct there? And I think these phones, were one of the first phones where you could actually type and send sort of little SMM messages on them. Have I got that right? And they were, again, like the Nokia that were probably losing popularity at this stage. The Burberrys were very, very popular and also very expensive for that time. But like I said, technology was absolutely snowballing at this time period. People were excited about what was next to come along. When we think back at the technology we had back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, all of that technology in just 20, 25 years is now obsolete. We just laugh at the size of the memory, the size of the gigabytes we had compared to what we can have now. Terabytes, and the price of things, how it all came down, the advancement in screens. We've come along so quickly in this 25, 26 years now, where we wonder how much further can technology take us. We've got OLED screens. We've got OLED screens on mobile phones. We've got high resolution on our phones. How much more detail can our eyes see? How much faster now can our internet become? Do you remember when we first got on the internet back there in the early 2000s, late 90s, when we had to actually dial up a modem? How slow it was? It seems amazing, doesn't it? This is only 25 years ago. The advancement has been incredible, where we're now at this stage that we've become, or we've arrived at today. And probably my feeling, and the same as a lot of other people out there, they probably feel now that the technology that we've got and how far it has advanced to, it has now become a little bit intrusive in our lives. It monitors where we are. It monitors what we look at. It sends advertising. We're bombarded all the time today, aren't we, by ads. We could be sitting down talking about what cat food we want to buy our cat. And then the next day, there on our phone, there it is, an advertisement for cat food. It's ridiculous how we are traced by our devices today. But saying that, people have become addicted, I feel, to a phone. We cannot live today. We cannot survive today without a smartphone. And the manufacturers and the government, they know that. They know we need a smartphone. To prove the point how addicted we have become, just look around you when people are walking about around the town. Everybody's got their head down, aren't they? Looking at their screen. We have become addicted to looking at screens. But what's this got to do with hi-fi? Well, I'm going to get to that right now. And my point that I'm trying to say is how we've become addicted to having a screen to look at. You think of our car, you think of the 80s cars. I love 80s hot hatches. Absolutely love cars from the 80s. They were so basic compared to today's car. And what have you got in today's car? That's right, another massive screen to distract you. You're driving along in your car, and all new cars now have got massive screens there in front of you. We want to touch the screen. We can't do anything on the car without touching the screen nowadays. And this has also, these screens, as you're probably aware, those people that watch YouTube channels, we've now got to a stage where we must have a screen on our hi-fi equipment. Look at most reviews that we have today about hi-fi. We can see the screen is now encroaching itself on the latest hi-fi products, whether it be a DAC or a streamer. It's very, very common now for new hi-fi products to have a very, very nice and attractive screen. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against screens. In fact, I think they do have their place and they can indeed look very nice. But the point I'm trying to make is that a screen has now become so intrusive of absolutely everything we own. We carry around our phone, we see it in our car, and we've got it on our hi-fi systems. Like I said, I like 80s hot hatch. I grew up in the 80s. I love everything. Well, not everything, but there's a lot of things I liked about growing up in the 80s. And one of the things I like about the 80s was the 80s sort of hi-fi. We know a lot of people like vintage hi-fi, but I don't put the 80s in vintage hi-fi. I put the 80s in what I would describe as the classic era of hi-fi. And that classic design of hi-fi in the 80s, to me, was the sort of typical sort of Japanese look at the time. There was a lot of Japanese brands that were very, very powerful in the 80s. You think of the NAD 3020, that kind of sort of battleship grey look. That to me was the typical look of the classic range of 80s, 90s hi-fi systems. Recently I had a new amplifier from Monunta, an Italian brand, and they've brought out a new integrated amplifier called the Classic. And you can see why they've called it the Classic, because it's got that classic 80s, 90s look about it. When I first started up my hi-fi business, that's how I thought my hi-fi business was going to be, sort of selling that sort of classic era kind of hi-fi from well-known Japanese brands. But that no longer exists. Just like those ancient phones we used to have, those ancient devices we used to listen to on music, the portable music players we used to carry around with us. Those devices from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they no longer really exist. So what has this got to do with the amplifier that I'm going to be talking about today? Well, the reason that I've gone on a bit for this introduction is that this amplifier, when it first hit the market, it sort of came out in that classic era of hi-fi products. I think it first appeared on the market in the 1990s at some stage. And this amplifier had a very particular look about it. This amplifier, its look is probably an amplifier that is going to be sort of a bit like sort of Marmite, where some people will love it and other people will not be so keen on its looks. But what is this amplifier that I'm talking about? I'm sure those that have tuned into my channel previously will have seen uploads I've made of the new Kraken AR6. In the 90s, when this brand first appeared, I'm hoping I'm getting my history correct here, but when this brand first appeared, they were actually known as Alchemist. And back then, if you can remember correctly, like I said, it was a very unusual design, but it was a design I remember when I first saw this design. I liked it basically because they dared to do something a little bit different, a little bit unusual, a little bit something off of the beaten track that nobody else was doing. I say everybody else sort of had that classic look with lots of buttons on it and greys and blacks. But the the Alchemist Kraken at that time was, it had sort of, it was chrome. I can't remember exactly what it looked like, but I seem to remember it was chrome with sort of gold buttons on it, etc. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the latest version of the Alchemist. So let's take a look at the Kraken AR6 Evolution Integrated Amplifier, the new latest version. Before I show you it, just going to go and have a look at the amplifier underneath here. This is the amplifier that I was talking about, the Minunta Classic. And you can see why it's called a Classic, because it's got that typical 80s look about it. The colouring, the design, very, very 80s design that. And like I said, the Kraken is a typical classic amplifier from that era. And I'm sure you'll notice as I get up close to it there, you'll notice that it hasn't got a screen on the front of it. How fun is that? Here we are in 2025, 2026, and we've got a brand new hi-fi product that actually hasn't got a screen on it. There's nothing to touch there on the front panel. But the design is very, very similar to how it appeared there when it first hit the market in the early 1990s. It's very distinctive styling on this, and you can see the heat shrinks there on the side. I haven't found that this amplifier gets particularly warm, to be honest with you. I was told that it gets hot running in Class A. Don't think it runs the whole range in Class A, but it is biased in Class A. But like I said, I don't find the amplifier gets particularly hot to touch, so those heat shrinks, they're obviously doing their job. It's an amplifier also that I don't think is particularly photogenic, and it looks a lot nicer in the flesh than what it does, like I say, in a photograph. When you actually see it, it's actually quite an attractive design. I like it, like I said, because it stands out. It dares to be something a little bit different. It's obviously going to divide many opinions. Some are going to love it, some are going to hate it. And that's the good thing about hi-fi. We've all got our own personal preferences, and nobody else can tell us that we're right or that we are wrong. On the front there, you say it's very, very simple to use. You might be put off by the fact that it doesn't actually come with a remote control. It's very, very simple to use. This one here, the chrome one in the middle, that's your volume. up and down, and this outer black plastic ring here, that is your source selector. So like I say, if I can, where am I going? We've got auxiliary. Oh, it's hard to hold the camera and move this at the same time. DAB, PC. I say it's a little bit strange, the titles they've given it. DVD, CD, RCA, but a reason, like I said, the screen there is very, very small, so there's not really much else you can do with that. So that's what the front looks like. It's small in size, it weighs just under 4 kilos. It's got an external power supply. You've got a choice of models. This is the entry level one. There is another version that has a larger, more powerful power supply. And you've also got the option of adding a phono stage. Like I said, this particular model doesn't have a phono stage. Now let's take a look at the rear of the amplifier. Here we see the rear of the amplifier. It's a made in the UK amplifier. It's very, very well built, nicely constructed, keenly priced for something that's made here in the UK. You might think you might be a little bit mad releasing a new product in 2025. We're not exactly in the golden era of hi-fi, are we? So it's quite a brave move to release a new amplifier in this day and age, especially sort of with the onslaught of Chinese manufacturers and what they're producing and the prices that they're managing to produce things at. But here we are, the rear of the Kraken. This here is obviously where you connect up the power supply. Got your speaker terminals, left hand side, right hand side, etc. There's what I'm talking about. You can specify, if you wish, to include a phono stage for those that are still into vinyl. There are our inputs: CD, DVD, PC, DAB, auxiliary and record. It might seem a little bit strange and a little bit peculiar what they're called, some of those inputs: DVD, PC, DAB. Does DAB still exist? Don't think it does it? Let me know in the comments down below. Is DAB still around? Don't think it is. Well, anyway, there's the rear of the Kraken. Like I said, it's very nicely screwed together. It's not particularly heavy. It's small in size. Doesn't take up huge amount of real estate. You can compare it there to the Minunta that's down there below it, which is sort of much larger in size. So it's a rather small integrated amplifier. So you're probably wondering, what are my opinions then of this amplifier? I've had this amplifier for about 3 or 4 months. I think you needed to have a product for that amount of time to really sort of create an opinion on a product's sound characteristics. I don't understand people that can have a product for just about an hour and decide straight away whether or not they like the sound of it. I think you really need to have a product for a good few months to be able to create an opinion about an amplifier's sound, whether or not you can live with that amplifier, whether or not you enjoy the sound of that amplifier. Now I'm going to tell you my subjective opinion of how I found the Kraken amplifier. Like I said, it is purely a subjective opinion. My subjective opinion in my room, listening to my music. Now, I know there are people out there, for some bizarre reason, they get extremely upset over someone's subjective opinion. They'll only buy something they'll only buy something based on how a product measures. Other people get offended by other people's subjective opinion, and I just don't understand why. We all have different likes, we all hear things differently, we've all got different ears, we all like different music, we all listen in different rooms, we've all got different loudspeakers. So everyone's got a right to have a subjective opinion on something. Just because you didn't like it, it doesn't mean somebody else likes it. If they like it, good for them. It's not up to you to tell them what they are hearing. And that is what I'm going to do about the Kraken amplifier. It's just my experience of living with this amplifier for the past 3 to 4 months. And that's it, a subjective opinion. I needed this amplifier for that period of time because, to be honest with you, I actually, well, when I first saw this amplifier and when I first heard about this amplifier, for some extremely bizarre and strange reason, I conjured up in my mind that it was going to sound like a Sonata. Now, I used to love Sonata amplifiers. I remember when I used to sell them back in Spain. I absolutely adore the sound of the Sonata Campion and Alabaster. And maybe I wished that the Kraken was going to sound similar similar to a Sonata. But when I put it on and listened to it, I knew basically straight away, even though they looked, or I thought they were going to sound the same, they didn't. I've had this amplifier 3 or 4 months, like I said, and to be honest with you, I found this amplifier extremely hard to describe its sonic characteristic. And the reason for that is because it doesn't have one. I don't think it imparts anything on the music. It just plays what's presented before it. It just plays what the source is. Now today, most sources or most DACs are pretty good, aren't they? We all know that. There's not a huge amount of difference between DACs this day and age. They're all good sounding products. So the chances are that you're not going to go wrong with this amplifier because, like I said, this amplifier will pick up on the source component. And also I would say is that this amplifier will need careful partnering, and I'm going to explain to you why I think it needs careful partnering compared to other maybe different amplifiers. Now the treble on the Kraken is extremely pure. It is extremely clear sounding. When I say the word clear, please don't think I mean bright. It's not bright. Now I'm going to use an analogy that's been used many times before, and that is of a pane of glass, a window. And the Kraken is like a window that has just been cleaned. You can see straight out the window. There's no smearing, there's no fingerprints, there's no dirt. You've got a great view out of that window. You can see everything in focus outside of that window, and that is what the Kraken's treble is like. It is extremely clean sounding. It doesn't sweeten the treble, it doesn't smooth the treble. Oh, excuse me, it doesn't roll off the treble. It's just an extremely clean sounding treble. And because it is such a clean sounding treble, I strongly recommend with this amplifier is that you use it with warm sounding loudspeakers. Loudspeakers that have got a warm treble, a smooth rolled off treble, because personally I feel if you use this with a bright sounding pair of loudspeakers, and we all know manufacturers that make bright sounding sort of treble happy loudspeakers, so there's no need to mention any manufacturers' names here, but I think we all sort of conjure up names when we think of bright sounding loudspeakers. And my personal advice is anybody contemplating purchasing this amplifier is that I would personally sort of keep away from sort of a brighter sounding loudspeaker, and I would go for a warmer loudspeaker, one that's sort of rich in the bass and, like I say, sort of rolled off and kind of smooth in the treble, because I think a bright treble and an extremely clear, clean sounding treble might be a little bit too much. Where I feel this amplifier really excels in, and that is the female voice. It sounds gorgeous with female vocals. It sounds excellent with all type of vocals, but it definitely has an affinity for the female voice. Because we know the male voice generally tends to be a little bit lower and the female voice tends to be a little bit higher, the Kraken, like I said, seems to enjoy the female voice, and the music, when you're listening to a female vocalist, sounds absolutely gorgeous through the Kraken. It's an amplifier that likes, I would say, simple arrangements, folk music, country music, natural sounding instruments. I think it prefers natural, organic instruments more than electronic sounding music. It's not like an amplifier that you would invite, like a younger person that wants to have a party and he wants to invite his mates around to impress them with his new amplifier. I don't think it's that type of amplifier that sets out to impress you with thumping bass and masses of volume. It's not a party animal. It's a refined animal. Like I say, it likes natural sounding instruments, real acoustic instruments, not electronic instruments. That is the opinion that I've created from this amplifier. I would use this amplifier in rooms ranging from probably fairly small rooms, say 12 square meters, up to probably 20, maybe 25 square meters. I don't think I would go particularly over that size of room. I think it might struggle to fill a room of that size. It's an intimate sounding amplifier. It presents the music right there in front of you. Everything's nicely arranged. It's not one of those amplifiers that's got a massive sound stage, but the sound stage that it does present is very natural, and it's easy to distinguish the vocals dead bang in the centre and what instruments are playing to the left hand side and what instruments are going on the right hand side. I say it's not an amplifier that overemphasises the soundstage to make music sound probably larger than what it actually is. It'd be very interesting that people who have got the original of this, and they can compare how they think the original sounds to how I think the sort of 2025 version sounds. To me, again, I just really like to hammer home the point that this is an amplifier for sort of more cultured pair of ears. People that like listening to vocalists, like I said, especially the female vocal, and natural sounding instruments, violins, pianos, orchestras, folk music, that kind of thing. I think this amplifier really excels with. And again, I would like to emphasize, again, this is just my personal opinion, is that I would tend to keep away from bright. I wouldn't match this amplifier with thin, bright sounding, impressive loudspeakers. I would go for a sort of a brand that sort of is more known for sort of being more natural, refined, smooth and warm sounding. The negatives on this amplifier, I don't think sonically there are no negatives. I think the negatives on the amplifier will be is that it doesn't come with a remote control. I think a lot of people like to have remote control in this day and age. It goes back to the screen thing. I think people like to have something visible to use to control a product with. With the Kraken, you have to sort of get off your backside to turn the thing up and down. The volume, I think that could be a negative. Again, going back to the design, I think it's going to be very Marmite. Even though I like it, it dares to be different. I think there's going to be 50% that like it, and there's going to be another 50% that are going to look here and think, oh, no, that's not for me. So these are just things to bear in mind. It's not a modern day amplifier. It's a classic. It's from the classic era of hi-fi. I'm talking 80s, 90s. It is that era of amplifier. People my age that grew up with this type of amplifier that don't need all the modern bells and whistles. We don't need to have a screen on the front of our hi-fi product. What we do need is something that makes music, something that likes natural sounding music, something that sounds realistic, something that's not enforcing a particular sonic character on us. It's not an amplifier that sets out to impress. So there we go, that's my thoughts of the Kraken. Please come along here to Eden Audio. We've got this on demonstration. I'm just going to tell you the speakers that I've been using it with. I've been using it with the Pylon Audio J10s. I've been using it with the Pylon Audio, the Diamond series, the Diamond 25s. I've been using it with some Aurelia loudspeakers, and I've also sort of matched it up with some NHT loudspeakers. Now the Pylon loudspeakers match very nicely with it because Pylon Audio are sort of voiced more on the sort of smoother, warmer side. So they do make a nice match with this amplifier. As I say, if you like female vocals, which I do, I must say I do like female vocalists, I like instrumental music, this amplifier I think is for you. You really give that a listen, like I say, if you're into that type of music, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for listening. I hope you found it informative. As I say, it's been a while coming because you do need to live with a hi-fi product for a couple of months to really know and get to know its sound character and whether or not you can live with a certain product. You can't make a judgment on a hi-fi product in a day or two or an hour or two. Absolutely nuts. Anyway, there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for whatever we've got coming next, which at the moment I'm not sure what it's going to be. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.